guys, this is Kendall. Today we're going to be making a anger behavior cycle poster. You can do this at home if you have a poster board, if you have even just a piece of paper, a notebook. You could do it on a note card if you like. I have this glittery poster board and some markers that I just got from Dollar General that were like $1. You could use pen, pencil, paint, anything that you feel like will help you with recall of some of these steps in the cycle, okay? And we're gonna use this to help refresh our memory with some of the skills that we've learned so far, and also to look ahead to some of the skills that we will learn, so that eventually when you look at this cycle, you'll be able to recall, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing at that point in the cycle, okay? So we're gonna start with just writing right in the center, anger control. Now remember, it doesn't have to be anger. It can be whatever's underneath your anger, right? It could be sadness, stress. I know sometimes when I get really hungry, I get really angry. So just keep that in mind. Just because we're saying the word anger doesn't mean that's exactly what we have to use it for every time. When we're talking about emotional regulation, we can use a lot of these skills for really any emotion and our behavior that follows. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch colors here. I'm gonna start off with a red because the beginning of the cycle is usually when you're most upset. Something happens and you get upset. It doesn't matter if you're sad or stressed, or if it feels like you go straight to anger, right? Because we sometimes aren't able to slow down that fuse. We're gonna have a trigger at the beginning. So I'm gonna write that right at the top because that's our first step in this whole cycle. I'm gonna put a square around it, like I said, whatever helps you remember. If you wanna put a star next to it, if you wanna put a circle around it, triangle, whatever you feel like. And then I'm also gonna put an arrow because I wanna make sure that when I'm following this later, that I remember that, oh, that's the direction I'm going in. So I'm gonna keep using my red because the next step is cues. And cues are those things that we feel in our body, right? So I might start to feel sweat in my palms. I might start to realize that I have a headache, or that my fists or my hands are starting to go into a fist, right? Sometimes we have some physical cues that happen before we even realize, oh, I'm feeling stressed, or oh, I'm feeling angry right now, right? This will still be in that step of that upset, right? So this is when you're first upset and you're starting to pick up on certain things to understand and be aware of what emotion you're feeling. So the next one, I'm actually gonna pull out like a purple because that's a calming color for me. And the next one's gonna be anger reducers. And if you've learned this step before, we've probably worked on specific things that you can do that are individual to you that help you cope with some of that anger. I've heard a lot of people use art. They might go and doodle. They might do some deep breathing. Some other things I've heard, they might go for a walk, or they might do something active, right? So anger reducers, that's gonna be that next step. So as we're going through the cycle, you're gonna see, okay, this is where I start, this is where I'm most upset, I'm starting to be aware of that upset, and I'm starting to use the skills that I've been learning so far, right? So the reducers are one of the first things that you're gonna start to implement before you behave, right? This is all about thinking ahead before we behave. I'm gonna go ahead and use a darker blue, this like navy blue here, because that keeps me calm too, but it's still going into that right direction, right? For reminders. So we typically use reminders when we are aware of our emotion, right? So we've had a trigger. We're aware of our cues. We maybe have used some reducers. Maybe we've tried deep breathing. Maybe we've used making a complaint and went and had some space for ourselves to help us calm down. And at this point, it's really important that we remind ourselves and motivate ourselves to continue on this cycle, this emotional regulation cycle, where we remind ourselves it's important to behave in a way that gives us the best outcomes, right? So some reminders that I hear often are, well, I really don't want to get in trouble, right? Or I really don't want to get grounded. Or, hey, if I choose the right behavior, I might get an incentive. I might get a reward. I might get some extra TV time, or I might get to stay up an extra 30 minutes, you know, whatever incentive program you have at home, right? So the next one, I'm using a lighter blue here. And this one's one of the most important parts, because this is right before we're about to behave, right? So when we're talking about the anger behavior cycle, and in a second I'll actually draw on here this the ABCs that I'm about to talk about, but we talk about the ABCs of anger, where the A is like what happened, right? So kind of up here, the trigger, the event that happened that made us upset. The B is when we behave, right? So all of this is still before the B. It's actually like right between the A and the B, right? And then we have the B, which is our behavior, and that leads to the C, which is our consequence. Now there can be good or bad consequences. So we want to keep that in mind. We do have a choice throughout this whole process. So thinking ahead goes right into when we go over those ABCs of anger. So I'm just going to write that right here. Put a box around it. This is looking pretty good. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull a green, because green is just a feel-good color, right? And that's going to be towards the end of our cycle, right? Thinking ahead, like I said, that's when you're taking into account all of these things, and you're really making the informed decision and a very thoughtful decision on what your behavior is going to be based on how you're feeling. And if you're watching this video, we've probably gone over most of these skills together, so you know that using some of these reducers, using some of these reminders can help us motivate ourselves, but also thinking ahead helps us with, okay, if I do this, if this, then this, right? The if-then statements, right? So those are the kind of skills that you're gonna wanna use in the thinking ahead portion. So the self-evaluation is the next step. And I'm actually gonna add in something extra here in a second. So I'm gonna make this arrow a little bit to the side over here, make it green, because it's a feel-good color. Boop. Self-evaluation. So the self-evaluation is specifically a point in the cycle where you get to decide if you did well in your behavior or if you could have done better. At this point, this is where you as an individual are able to look at your own behavior, and without anybody else's input, you're able to say, you know what, my consequence was not very good. I probably could have done better, and maybe I could have used this skill instead of what I did, right? So maybe instead of yelling, I could have made a complaint, and that would have maybe helped with the outcome. So that's going to be a really important part in the cycle, because you want to, learn from, even if we go through this whole cycle together and we do end up having a bad outcome, we want to learn from it and try and do better next time. So that's one of the most key parts for preparing for the next time that you might have a hassle. I'm gonna go in there with just a darker green, just do a ziggly line right here to just emphasize that that's the end of the cycle. But like I said, you might have another hassle and then you'll be going through the cycle again. So something that I wanted to add to this is that something that you can use alongside self-evaluation is a social skill. What I mean by that, and if you've worked with me, you probably remember me saying a lot, how did you know that you did well or not well in your behavior? And I'll ask you, how did other people respond to your behavior? And usually if other people responded in a negative way or you know, in a out of anger themselves or things like that, usually we could have done something better in the cycle here to have a better outcome. Sometimes it's not in our control, and that's okay. Sometimes it is though. One of the skills that we can use when we're coming out of thinking ahead and we're moving into self-evaluation is just asking the question, hey mom, how do you think I did there? Do you think I could have done something better there? And vice versa, right? Mom is able to even ask you, is there a way I could have helped support you in that situation? You know, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, you know, whoever your guardian is, even teachers, right? We talk a lot about having some of these hassles at school. So this is a way that you can check in with your support network to see how best they can support you and how you can best support them when you're going through some hassles together. So I hope that you like this video. I'll hope to include a picture of the cycle itself. And I'd really like to see what kind of creative ideas you guys come up with yourselves when you're creating these posters. Like I said, it could even be on a little note card. If that's all you got, that's cool. But I'd love to see what you come up with. I hope you have a good day, and we'll see each other next time. Bye.